Good morning. Today is March 15th, 2019, and my name is Judy Jenkins. I'm a volunteer here with the Hanford branch of the Kings County Library for a Veteran History Project. Would you please state your full name?
I'm John L Kuykendall.
Good morning, Mr. Kuykendall, and we're very glad that you can be with us here today.
Thank you.
Where are you from?
I was born in Eugene, Oregon.
Okay.
My dad was at law school after World War II. He'd been a naval officer. Then I grew up all over the place, Pacific Northwest, Colorado, etc.
Okay, all right. So you did a lot of traveling then with your parents?
Oh, yeah.
Your family. Are your parents still alive today? Are they still with us?
No, my dad passed about 10 years ago, and my mom passed 1 year ago this month.
Oh, okay. And what did your mom do for a living? Your mother? Sorry.
My mother was a war bride from Australia.
Oh, that's
It's a
interesting.
great story.
Okay.
My dad was a naval officer in World War II, and he was down there during the fighting in the Admiralty Islands and the Solomon Islands down in the South Pacific. And he was attached after that to a naval staff in Melbourne, Australia. Well, my mom's family was pretty well to do, and they would take in on Sundays the American officers and have them over for tea or dinner or whatever.
How nice.
So my dad jumped at the chance to do that, and he went to mom's house, and here this beautiful 18-year-old girl comes out wheeling the tea cart, you know, and my dad, being a farm boy from Oregon and the first member of his family to ever go to college, immediately assumed she was the maid.
Oh, my goodness.
Talk about getting off on the wrong foot.
Yes.
They definitely
That's funny.
patched things up, though.
Okay.
And they were granted permission to marry because in World War II it was very difficult to get permission to marry a foreign national because they figured all these young guys just got infatuated over there and
Right,
might be difficult.
right. I understand that. That's a good story. So what do you, okay. So once they got married, what did she do?
What did she do?
Yes.
Okay, she volunteered for a lot of stuff.
Okay.
But my dad had a very good and varied career, and he was extremely successful. So she never really worked outside the home.
Good, good. Do you have any siblings?
Yes, I'm
How
the
many?
oldest of four.
Okay. All boys?
No, luckily we have one girl.
Oh, there you go. Gotta have that one. What are their ages?
I'm 71. I'll be 72 in about 2 weeks. We were all 4 years apart. My parents believed in planning for college.
Okay.
So my brother David is 4 years younger than I. My sister Susan is 3.5 years younger than he. And then my baby brother Peter is 10 years younger than I am. So he'd be 61.
Okay, okay. Did any of them serve also in the military?
No.
No, just you. Okay, what did you do before serving?
Oh, I had a wonderful career lined up.
Okay.
I had gone to college my first 2 years in Oregon at a small Baptist school called Linfield College, liberal arts school. And then I transferred to the University of Colorado, and I did a dual major in computer science and marketing. So what I wanted to do was something that would keep me in the Denver area.
Okay.
So luckily, I got recruited by IBM just before graduation to be marketing the huge computer systems that used to fill a room practically
Right, right. That's
in
a good
Denver.
word.
So I had my dream job. Carolyn and I figured that I would get drafted because Vietnam was really hot back in '69 there. So we got married 3 months before graduation, and she got pregnant on the honeymoon. So lots of things happened in '69. We got married, got recruited by IBM, graduated from college, started my career. Draft board gave me a deferment, because of
Right.
having a wife and child.
Right.
And I started my career with IBM, and then that evaporated when I got drafted.
Wow. That is a quick transition there. So what branch of service did you serve in?
I was in the Navy.
You're in the Navy, okay. And what year was that again?
1969 through 1974 on active duty, and then I was in the reserves till the end of 78.
Okay, okay. What inspired, well, did you have, so you did or you didn't have a choice of what branch of military you went in?
Oh, I totally did.
Oh, okay.
I was, see, because I hadn't signed up for any officer programs like
Okay.
ROTC or anything like that, I was gonna have to go in as an enlisted man.
Sure.
As an E1 at the bottom of the ladder, and they drafted me into the Army. And they said, you have 30 days to find another service if you'd like to. And my dad had been in the Navy, and I always admired the Navy, and so I knew I wanted to go in the Navy if I could.
Okay.
So I had to go in enlisted, but the recruiter said, as they all do, oh, you'll go to OCS right away and you won't have any trouble. Little did I know.
Yes, yes. Oh, so how was the boot camp experience?
Boot camp was great.
Really?
As a matter of fact, this was 1969. I went to
Okay.
boot camp in San Diego.
Okay.
That was when the draft was the hottest, and there were the most people going through boot camp of the entire wartime.
Okay.
My boot camp company had probably 30 guys in it, but our whole boot camp class that went through had 750 guys in it. And I was not only the leader of my boot camp company, I was voted the #1 recruit out of the 750 guys.
That's wonderful.
So I took to it like a duck to water. I've always been a little OCD, and I certainly know how to make my bed. You're not allowed to laugh during the interview.
Okay. Tell me about your instructors then.
Oh, we had a wonderful chief petty officer who ran our boot camp company.
Okay.
And he was probably about 5'6", and there I am, 6'4". And he was just the ideal guy to do this. I mean, he had the discipline, but he had a good sense of humor. He understood the majority of us had not enlisted voluntarily.
Right.
And he knew that, like myself, probably 25% of the guys had been through college already. Some of them were married. And he was just a very understanding guy. He made it fun. I had a very good time.
Okay, so that was going to be part of what I was going to ask you next question about military life and adjusting to it. So you felt very positive about adjusting.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, that's
no, I didn't volunteer to go in, but
Yes.
since I was in, I was going to make the best of it.
Okay,
And I love my country, so.
excellent. What did you do when you were on leave?
When I was on leave,
Did you have it?
I had Christmas leave from boot camp. So boot
All right.
camp ran from basically the end of October until the end of January.
Okay.
And I was given 2 weeks of Christmas leave. Now, you remember, my wife got pregnant on our honeymoon at the end of March.
Right.
So there was a 7-day window when Carolyn could have that baby up in Seattle when I would be there. And she did it. And that is dedication. And in 2 weeks, we're having our 50th wedding anniversary on the 29th of March, which is also Vietnam Veterans Day nationally.
Congratulations. So, did you have any specialized training?
Yes, I did. They made me a radioman. Oh, on the day that we were supposed to be told about officer candidate school opportunities and stuff like that, our regular guy in charge of our boot camp class was not there, and there was a substitute guy there who had a very bad attitude. And somebody in our group, our boot camp company, had done something wrong, and so he didn't let us go to the lecture to learn about the opportunities for OCS. At the time, I didn't think too much about it.
Right.
Out of boot camp, we did aptitude tests and stuff.
Okay.
So here I am, I want to go into computer science or something like that. The Navy had lots of computers. They said, well, you're a college graduate, you could probably type. We're going to make you a radioman so you can listen to Morse code over the earphones
Okay.
and type out what the message is.
Okay.
After radio school, where I also excelled, they offered me a year of shore duty outside of San Francisco, outside of Vallejo.
Okay.
Since my baby was just born, you know, and I didn't want to be going to sea right away or Vietnam or whatever, I decided to take that 1-year assignment up in the Bay Area.
Okay. So, what are some of your stressors that were associated with your assignments as a radioman?
As a radioman, none.
None,
I mean,
okay.
it was great. I liked the people I was with.
Okay.
We were at a top secret Navy receiver site
Mm-hmm.
out in the Delta, a long way from any other buildings or anything. It was a good place to receive those signals from outer space or whatever, and they were intercepting communications from Russia and all kinds of stuff like that. And so it was not a stressful job. We didn't have any direct, combat or anything else, nothing contentious,
Okay.
and I felt I was doing something good.
What about in addition to like future assignments?
Well, I didn't know what would be coming up in the future, but while I was there, can I tell you a short story?
Certainly.
All right. My wife had gone to Navy relief because I was making a tiny amount of money.
Okay.
And we had bought a car while we were in San Diego, and we had our baby, and we had to rent an apartment off the base because they had no housing. So we didn't have any extra money. And we had just gotten to town, having been assigned there. And my wife went to what's called Navy Relief, which is the charity arm on the base there at the Mare Island Naval Shipyard, which is the biggest base. And she ran into this woman who was so kind, and Carolyn said, "We don't have any money for a motel until we get assigned to some kind of civilian apartment.
Sure.
Could you loan us some money?" Turns out, serendipitously, this woman was the wife of the base commander.
Oh.
And she said, "I'm not allowed to do this, but we have a lovely house here on the base that was built back in the 40s, and it has a guest house in the back. And because your baby is so cute, we think we will let you stay in our guest house until you can get your apartment."
That was a blessing.
And every night we would have dinner with this guy who commanded the base and his wife. And after about 2 nights, he said to me, "You're an idiot if you don't apply for officer candidate school, because you're going to Vietnam anyway. You might as well go as an officer and not an enlisted radioman."
Right.
And that turned my whole career around in the Navy.
Okay, all right. Tell me about your military friendships.
Oh, yeah. I make friends pretty easily.
Do you stay in contact with them?
I definitely stay in contact with the people from the most significant part of my military career, which was being in Vietnam on my ship.
Okay, okay.
I'm in a reunion group. I go get together with them every year. It's surprising how many are still interested in that stuff.
Excellent, excellent. So do you have any specific memories about your service that has impacted your life even as of today?
Oh, yeah. It's the most amazing
Well,
story.
you don't have to list them all, but I mean, anything
No,
that was
I'll
okay.
keep it brief.
Okay,
My training in officer candidate school, because of my business degree and my computer science background, was to be a supply corps officer.
okay,
That means we would manage the ship's store, all of the repair parts for the ship. We would pay the crew, we would manage the food service, just kind of the business end of a warship. So I was number 2 in my class. I was number 3 in my class from officer candidate school. Number 1 in the class got embassy duty in Paris. Number 2 got embassy duty in London. And number 3 got the most coveted surface afloat deal, which is independent supply corps duty as an ensign on a destroyer going to war.
okay,
My wife didn't feel that was a good trade-off.
okay. Okay, I can understand that with a new baby and all.
But to get to your question, as soon as I got to the ship, and it was a great ship with 300 men and 6 officers, one of our officers was the gunnery officer, and he would be in charge of firing the guns and the missiles and all that stuff.
Right?
And he was a sawed-off little guy who thought he knew everything from Annapolis. And so he'd gone to Annapolis, the Naval Academy, and he was way better than us civilian types. Anyway, the minute we got into combat in Vietnam, he fell apart and had a nervous breakdown. He just panicked. The captain had him helicoptered off the ship and came to me and said, "John, we think you have a lot of promise. You get to be the gunnery officer also this entire year in Vietnam." So that was my battlefield promotion, where I learned all of my lessons about the Navy that really counted,
Okay.
which was adapting and taking responsibility for something I knew nothing about, grace under pressure and being able to do everything without panicking, inspiring other people, and particularly handling 2 full-time jobs with a staff of only 5 officers.
That's a full plate. Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Yes, in addition to the normal combat medals and Vietnam service and that type of thing, we did a couple of things. When I was gunnery officer, I sank an enemy ship. There was a big problem at the end of the war. They were trying to get the North Vietnamese to the peace talks table in Paris, and they wouldn't come. So finally, the president authorized us to go north of the DMZ, and they were mining Haiphong Harbor and bombing with B-52s and F-4s Hanoi itself. So our job was to go in. They were knocking down those B-52s. The first week, they downed 4 of them, and it was just a terrible thing. And so they sent us in with our missiles and our guns to try and take out those surface-to-air missile batteries around Hanoi and Haiphong. And that's what we did. Well, that bottled up the harbor of Haiphong, which is where all the Russian and Chinese supply ships came in with all the ammunition and fuel and everything. So they started offloading those ships on the offshore islands right off the coast of North Vietnam. And our job was to try and take out those Vietnamese supply boats that would take the ammunition and stuff off of those ships and bring it ashore. And I sank one of those.
Wow.
So I got a big citation for that. We got a big citation for being the first Navy ship to ever fire a ship-to-shore missile in combat, which was taking out those SAM sites, and meritorious unit commendations and stuff.
That's wonderful. I was going to ask you, would you like to speak about any of your comrades that were wounded or fallen? You mentioned the one that had to leave the ship because he was emotionally, he had emotional issues, but is anybody else?
We were very lucky. Nobody on our ship was injured.
Okay.
Our ship was never, we were hit by a lot of enemy fire, but it never killed or injured anybody. But the captain of our ship, who replaced our first captain about halfway through the Vietnam tour, had been the executive officer on a sister ship called the Higbee, and it was hit by a MiG. So it was operating off of North Vietnam. And one of these MiG jets came out of North Vietnam and bombed their after gun turret. And luckily, thank God, about half an hour before that, one of their guns had misfired and they had evacuated the turret of all the people. So a couple of people got injured, but nobody got killed, and the ship was completely put out of commission for a while. So then he came over to our ship. So we had a lot of experience, and he had seen that happen, but I was very lucky not to.
Okay. Wow. Do you recall the day your service ended? What year was that?
Do I recall what?
The last day of service. What day was that?
It was July
What
of
year?
'74.
Okay.
And I was very sad about the fact that our ship was being turned into a reserve ship. See, the war ended in '73. They wanted to get all those extra people out and off the payroll, and they didn't need them anymore. And my ship was built in 1944. So it was a good ship, but it was at the end of its life. And so they turned it into a reserve ship. And I thought to myself that I was just as happy to be leaving, you know, if it wasn't going to be an active ship running around and doing what it used to do. It later ended up in the Taiwanese Navy for 10 years before they scrapped it.
Wow. Okay. Can you describe the readjustment to civilian life that your life moved forward into?
I told you I'm celebrating my 50th wedding anniversary.
Right.
When you're in the military and when you're gone for a year and your life is in danger every day, your wife takes over. And my wife is a very strong woman anyway, which is one reason I met her and married her, obviously. Anyway, so I come back from Vietnam, and it's not that, let me see, it was about a year before I got out. But I thought I'd come back and be the king of the roost and everything and all that kind of stuff. That was a good adjustment. Getting out of the military was nothing compared to figuring out how to be a good husband again.
That's true, that's true. So your section at home then was that probably a positive thing, but because you all were married, you had to you go through like a major adjustment then, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I had to reorder my priorities. Plus, when you've been gone from home and civilization for a year in a life and death situation, and you're just hanging out with your buddies with all your bad language and everything, it's a double adjustment.
It's a double adjustment. Okay.
You got to get civilized again.
Yeah. So did you continue your education, and was it supported through the GI Bill?
Actually, no. I mean, I continued my education. I wanted to go back to work for IBM.
Okay.
But IBM had all their jobs full, and they didn't have to hold my job beyond 4 years, and I'd extended for a year to get OCS. So I came back, and I interviewed with a lot of companies to do a big high-level marketing job like I'd had before, and I ended up with Prudential Insurance. Because I got into the financial planning and pension consulting business and health insurance, I got my CLU, which is like a master's degree, chartered life underwriter in life insurance and investments, and a couple of other things, but I did that all on my own. I didn't really need to get the GI Bill or use it, but I think it's a wonderful thing.
Okay, all right, that's excellent. And I know you said you're part of the organizations outside of the military, outside of the Navy, where you have contacts with your friends. But do you do that often, or just a hit and miss when you have time?
I do it often now. It's a funny thing, you know, after it happens, it's easy to lose track of all those people. And as you get older and your memory goes, you don't even remember the names of all those people. But within the last 10 years, I've gotten really interested in looking into my service. And online, there's a tremendous amount of resource for people. Like on my ship, there's something called Together We Served. And you register on Together We Served, and you tell them every duty station that you were at, and what years you were there, and what your role was. And they have all these thousands of people across the country who've done the same thing. And they can tell you, they could connect you with 12 guys in my boot camp company, and a third of the guys on my ship. So once I got into that, then I found out there was a USS Hollister reunion group. And I went to my first reunion last September. It was the first one I'd gone to. And it was like we'd never been apart. And now I correspond with those guys every month.
That is great. That is great. So it makes you feel real positive. You can still reach out and get in touch with those people. That's good. So your military, no, my next question was, how has your military service affected your life? And what life lessons or observations did you gather for total service?
It's completely affected my life in a very, very positive way. As I mentioned to you, taking responsibility, being responsible for others' lives, understanding how to do things, and particularly in a wartime instead of a peacetime situation where there's so much at stake, where you do not have the luxury of doing it by the book if it has to be done this second. And you have to invent ways of doing stuff, and you have to depend on all kinds of other people. For example, I was brought up in a nice middle class, upper middle class environment. My bunkmate in boot camp was a car thief from Ohio. And the judge said you can either go to prison or you can join the Navy. In the Navy, I learned about all kinds of people. I destroyed all of my misconceptions, or many of my misconceptions, I hope. And those life lessons from that meant that when I transitioned and I had ever more increasing jobs and responsibility to manage millions of dollars and do all these things, any crisis that came up was nothing compared to what we'd all been through.
So it really shaped and impacted your future when you had left the Navy, and how you live and how you look at life right now today. It's still a positive impact.
Oh, completely. I would highly recommend. I'm a great believer in this idea that every kid between high school and college should do a 2-year service stint, not necessarily in the military, but maybe working in a hospital or something like that. Because a lot of kids, and my wife has taught community college and high school, a lot of kids don't really know what they want to do, and they haven't been out of their own little cocoon.
I wanted to ask you this question too, which is very important. Future generations are going to view this interview that we're having today. What would you like them to know? In a continuation with what you just said about our youth of today.
Yeah, I think I'm part of the Rotary Club, and we do a lot of work with the high school kids here in Hanford and Lemoore. And I love today's generation, particularly in Hanford and Lemoore. The Central Valley of California is such a unique microcosm. It's like Mayberry. It's like people used to be. It's like what's important to me, okay? When you go in the service in wartime and you write that check for up to and including your life to defend your country, you appreciate what it is. And when you go around the world and see 20 countries like I've seen, you appreciate America's unique way of life.
Exactly.
What I would say is you need to travel all you can.
Yes.
But you need to also be very careful about not throwing away the things that made this country great. I mean, I was pretty patriotic to start with. I was a Boy Scout and all that stuff. But now it's totally even more so. And when I see the way things are headed, luckily my grandkids, you know, and many other kids I know are on the right track. You know, I just wonder.
Well, I feel that people like you who've had a really good military career and had such a positive outlook on what you learned with your military career is we're very fortunate that you can work in organizations now to really help our young people, because I also agree that they need to know what's out there that can help them get started in life. I mean, it's very important, and I'm glad to hear you say that also about our young people. Is there anything else special that you like to add? I mean, you've given us a lot of information, but is there anything else special that you like to add?
Yeah, I've been very lucky all my life. I had a wonderful relationship with my grandparents who were farmers up in Oregon. I've had a lot of good memories of growing up, and a lot of things that my father did really instilled in me a sense of responsibility and a love of people and that type of thing. I just hope there's a way to foster that in more people, and that's what I try and give back through the Rotary Club, because it's all about personal relationships and doing the best thing for as many people as you can and keeping your eyes open. And as a financial planner, I would definitely advise people to not save it all for retirement, but spend some of it on world travel.
I noticed that there are a lot of veterans out here in California that are doing things to help younger people, and especially when it comes to education and advice into what their future endeavors would be. And I personally want to say, I thank you for that once again, because it is so important to help the generations that are coming in behind us and to help them learn about why it's important to join the military and about having respect for your country and about supporting the things that our country has stood for and still stand for.
Right, and the opportunity it gives everybody.
Exactly. Okay, well, I want to thank you so much, John, for taking this time for this interview. And above all, I want to thank you for your service to this country. It's been a joy to interview you, and we appreciate your time. And for the country, we appreciate your effort coming here and explaining and expressing how you feel and sharing your experiences with Hanford Library, as well as to other people who will be viewing this. We want to thank you very much.
I want to put in a final plug for the VFW and the American Legion.
Go ahead.
Because I have never belonged to any veterans organizations before I moved here to Hanford 4.5 years ago.
Okay.
And my acceptance and interaction with the American Legion and the VFW has been tremendous. And there's always things that kind of haunt you about your military service, but that is the best way to deal with that. And I'm very active in trying to deal with veteran suicide problems and stuff like that. So people need to be open to that, and I try and spread that word to younger people.
You mean like PTSD? Are you talking about those
Right, and
veterans
just
like that?
readjustment to civilian life now, because when these soldiers are in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria, they have to go over many times. None of us had to go over more than 1 year and then we were done. But these guys who have to go and do 3 or 4 tours, by the time they get back and get out of the service, there's a lot of problems to deal with.
Okay, is that problems with them in the military or problems trying to readjust?
No, emotional problems, interacting with other people,
Okay.
feeling good about themselves. There's just so many things that can be addressed by the VA and these other organizations. So that's the biggest message I would give. I'd like to reach some people who are younger than I am coming out of the service.
Yes, yes. And the service, all branches of the service have been going through many changes. And some have been positive and some have been negative. But once again, like we're interviewing you now, it's so very important that we have people like you being able to give back. Because you feel you want to give back, not because...
Oh, I do want to give back, and I'd be glad to do something like this at any time it would help you.
That's wonderful, that's wonderful. Okay, so I wanted, one other question I wanted to ask you. Because everything that you've told me in this interview has been positive, is there anything that you felt that was a negative during the whole time? The training and the experiences of going different places, assignments?
I might have thought while it was going on that something was a negative.
Right.
Like, the way you're treated in boot camp and stuff like that. But in retrospect, you look back.
Okay.
And you see what an effective way it was
Okay.
to bring you back to reality out of your privileged upbringing and dealing with other people and taking orders and all that type of stuff.
Okay.
And the stuff I went through in Vietnam and other parts of the world, I wouldn't really trade that for anything because I learned something everywhere I went. So nothing particularly negative.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. 45 seconds. Okay. All right. Well, this has been very informative. It has been and my pleasure to learn because when we have the opportunity for you veterans to speak with us, especially at Hanford Library, because we deal with history. And so more that we have you veterans come and explain what you've been through and how it's impacted your life, it really gives us, the volunteers, as well as the people who talk to you veterans, so much a bigger, better, more rounded picture of what you all have been through when you've had service.
Well, thank you so much for volunteering and doing this, and I'm so appreciative of the library service doing this too, and Pat, my dear friend.